Hello and welcome to my first YouTube video. For this video I'm going to show you how I prepare a DCC Concepts ADS-2SX Solenoid DCC decoder for use on my layout. This is how I do it. I'm not saying it's the right way, the wrong way. There are many other ways that you can get this ready, but I just want to give you a heads up as to really how I think it works best for me. So one of the things worth noting here is I like the ability to add connectivity to my layout. So I do use a lot of plugs. I'm trying to see what they've got some. So these type of things, and to go with them, these. So the way I've set up my points is all the wires that do come off my points have been soldered on, and on the end they've got a terminal connector, and all the wires that come off my DCC Concepts decoder will have the female version, and then it really does become plug and play. Okay, so what we will need for this exercise is clearly the decoder itself. Okay, my trusty 0 wire cutters, very thin flathead screwdriver, and I say thin because the holes and the screws that you have to screw into this thing are pretty small. A standard electrical screwdriver just won't do the job. Okay, straightforward chocolate box terminal block, and I'm just going to use this to gather all the input wires, so that when I do go to connect it to my bus, it's as straightforward as undoing 2 screws. Right, depending on what you want to set up, I'm going to set everything up on this so that you get a full thing. So I want to have a manual override to my points, so I'm not totally reliant on switching through DCC. I can also flick a switch to switch the points. So this is purely optional. This is out yourself, but I do have a single pole double throw switch, momentary switch, so always returns back to the center. It's not going to burn out your solenoid on your point motors. And just for the benefit for the record, I'm using seep point motors on my points. The beauty of this device, it has the ability to switch your frogs. Now, anybody who's worked with seep point motors in the past, they can be hit and miss. It is a mechanical frog switch. So effectively, as the solenoid fires, it drags a metal contact from the positive to the negative, and therefore switches the frog. If you're slightly out of alignment on your point motors, or there's a build-up of dust, dirt, grime, or whatever on your solenoid connections themselves, it can be hit and miss. This takes away that problem. As you can see here, you have a section there, and I'll hold that up and you can probably see that better. This section here is for controlling the frog. You've got a left in, a right in, and a centre for the frog. And again, I'll show you how to wire that as we do on this tutorial. And what else will you need? So clearly a host of wires. I've pre-cut these, but give you a flavour, and again, colour coding is entirely up to how you colour code. Now I use blue to connect my frog itself. My power wires, red and black, as with most people, and then I have my green, which is my common. Okay, so how's this going to set up? I need 2 wires, a green, a black, and a red, to connect direct to the switching functionality of my motor. I need 3 wires, blue, black, and red, to power my frog. However, only the blue will connect direct to the points. These 2 are to create a power feed into the frog switching mechanism to allow the feed to go. So let's show you how this is going to come together. First of all, let's sort out the switching, the frog switching mechanism itself. Okay, so first and foremost, loosen off the frog connections. Now this is a ADS-2, so it powers two 2-point motors. It's actually powerful enough to fire 4 solenoid motors. If you want to do that, there are many tutorials. I may even go ahead and put something online myself as to how to do that. Right, so first things first, stripping the wire. So again, personal preference, I tend to strip about 1 centimetre, twist. I then fold it back on itself. Don't know why, just habit. It's just a way I've gotten to do it. And then, so that will feed nicely into my right connection on my frog circuit. Okay, and then next, exactly the same process, and I'm going to feed into my left connection. Should tidy this wire up. I'm reusing some of the wires, guys, that I've used before. Just tidy them up as I go them. Again, pull out 1 centimetre, double over, and just feed that in there. Job done. Right, now then, essentially these don't have to go over to your track. What these can actually do is these can link directly to your bus. So what you can see there, that and that, and this is where the chocolate box comes in handy. You can see what I'm going to do with that there, and therefore you've now got power going into your DCC comms unit itself, and you've got power also feeding your frog mechanism, as you can see there and there. So when I switch the points, it will change the polarity accordingly on the frog mechanism, and I'm going to drop in this blue wire, will then feed out direct to the frog itself. So let's do that now whilst we're here. Just tidy this up. Okay, again, just strip the wire, bit of a twist, fold it double. That's already loose anyway, I think. Let's feed that in there. Perfect. Right, so that's the frog wiring complete. As I said to you, I do like to have the ability to sort of plug and unplug. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get my female crimping plug, crimp into it. By the way, if anybody ever thinks of anything to strip wires with other than this bit of kit, it is absolutely phenomenal. Stanley Fatmax wire strippers, I could not live without it. I got sick to death of making a right mess of stripping wires. This is so easy. It's even got my crimpers, you see in there. It's got a wire cutter, but I use Mesurance instead. But yeah, the crimping tool does exactly what I need it to do. So there we go. Right, that's that ready. That is now ready to connect to my layout. Good connection, and that's the frog essentially wired. Now, just for completeness, what I will do for the benefit of this video is I'll do this right now. Strip them off, get my wire strippers, whack that on there, pull them off, and then I'll take this one as well, do exactly the same with this one. That feels about, oh dear, see that you're not too bad. Get some fresh wire out. Okay, now I'm only going to wire one side at this time. I'll come back and do the other side once this video is complete, but you can see there, twist and twist. Yeah. at your chocolate block connector. You can feed that in there like so. Tighten that bad boy up. And that one in there like so. Tighten that bad boy up. And there you go. So now you can see from that I have all my power coming in that I need. I've got my red coming into the unit itself, and I've also got it into my frog power. I've got the black coming into the unit itself, and I've also got into my frog power. And out of that I have got my polarity switcher direct from the DCC. Just if you can hear the wind, by the way, this is I'm sat and this is a loft layout, and it's normally ideal for peace and quiet for filming this type of stuff. But Storm Dennis is making a visit, so for most of you can probably work this out, then this is early 2020, and Storm Dennis is the 4th named storm of the year. Anyway, enough of that. Right, so let's go with that. So once we're here and once we're tidying things up, let's just wire up the switch. Exactly the same process. What I've got is these are trimmed anyway because I pre-wired my switches. Switches are very easy. I got these from Export Tools if I'm not mistaken. Wired, soldered to the lugs in there, and then he shrunk. Okay, so switching next, right? Let's just go exactly the same process. Pull that up, pop my red feed into the left, tighten up, pop my right feed into the black. I don't know why I do this, guys, actually, where it really I should, in all fairness, do the common next, because it's probably easier to get in. Well, just habits I've got into. Just for the record, I mean, this is my probably 3rd attempt at building this layout. For various reasons, I have moved it around. It started off as a shed layout at the bottom of the garden, but I started a little concerned over the security of it. A couple of £1,000 worth of rolling stock floating around and leaving outside in the shed didn't feel the best, so I agreed with my wife that I would clear the loft out and then rebuild the entire thing in the loft. So at some point I will put a layout tour. Right, anyway, that side, so here's we've got it out. So now we've got a manual switch override. So you can see from there, I can effectively fire the points in whichever direction I like, without the need to fire it on my my layout controller. So again, purely optional, that one, guys. There's no need to do that one. You can work it perfectly from DCC without putting that on. That's just something I wanted to do because I do want to produce a mimic board for this layout. And what you can see, and I've not used yet, is coming off these terminals here is the ability to power LEDs as well. So clearly the ability to power LEDs and a momentary switch, then it says why wouldn't you build a mimic board at some point. So I'm just sort of wiring the functionality in now whilst I'm here. Right, lastly then is the feed out to the decoder itself. So again, my black and my green, I'm just going to trim these short actually this time. Black and my green and my red, that can go on there. Give it a bit of a spin, and then again as my red, let's pop you in there. Okay, then my common. It's much easier doing it that way, by the way. I'm gonna try and stick to that and then my black. Now it doesn't really matter, interesting, if you're wiring actually up to a point, you don't really need to follow the particular colour coding that I do. That's just personal preference. I'm used to it. Realistically, these can be any colour, and your common can be any colour as well. What they are doing, they're just providing the power to the switch. They're not actually related to your main bus. But I've just got into the habit of doing it that way. Right, let's strip these bad boys now. For some reason, as I said, I'm reusing some of these wires, so one of these female crimp tools is already on. Let us strip these wires back. Full. Get my female adapter. She can go in there. Crimp it up. Bad connection, guys. Let's try again with another one. Obviously didn't crimp that one hard enough. Right. Again, I would always say give these a tug to test the connection. And then exactly the same again on this one. Fold that over. A bit mess of that. And then crimp that up. Make sure I'm not using the one that's just broken. Like I said, I've made a right hash of that one. Anyway, that's you in there. Crimp that one up. And there we go. So now we have the whole electrical unit ready for use on the layout. Right, so let's just talk through this again. Right, as you can all see now, we have a number of things that so we have, let's get that one out of the way, we have on this side we have the DCC bus in, which is the red wire there, in, and the black in. So the whole unit has got power, and that will power both sides of this electrical unit. We then have the solenoid out, which is going to the layout itself. We have the common, which is the green. We have the black and the red, like I said, it can be any colour you want, and the female plugs, which will plug directly into my points themselves, which are pre-wired and installed. I'll show you them in a moment. Then we have the switches, again optional. Switch coming out, switch on the end, bang, bang, bang. Yeah, straightforward enough. And then the other element of the frog wiring, red out to the DCC bus into the frog to power it, black out to the DCC bus into the frog to power it, and my blue flog common coat. Very simple, lots and lots of wiring. You can see why colour coding is critical on this, but once you set yourself into a certain set of colour codes, it becomes very simple after that, and you can actually start to wire your points and your point motors and your other auxiliary systems to match your colour coding. Okay, right, let me pause for a second, then we'll take this away and start to install this in the layout, and I'll start to show you how this will connect and how it will work. Okay, back in a moment. Okay, so this is where it gets a tad more awkward now. So here we have the decoder, as I said, with the wiring loom now connected, right? And as I said before, actually then connectivity becomes relatively straightforward. So pop that over there. Let's try and get that in shot. Wrong way. There you go. That's in shot. Right. What do we have? Right, I have, for those who can see under here, I have my pre-wired connections to my points, which are here, and handily they are now colour coded, and just simply plug in to the male and female crimp connectors. So that's it, points connected up, really straightforward. Right, we then have the the frog. Now there's my frog wire. Oh, first problem is I have not put on a male connector. Right, easily rectified. Let's just strip that wire back. Okay, just trim that excess off in a second. Like I said, I prefer to use these crimp connectors because it does give me total flexibility to pull this off and move. And like I said, I've used 3 times now. I've actually started this layout. And okay. Right, so now we have point motor wired up. So point motor wired up there. We have solenoid. Not solenoid, frog powered up there. We have a temporary switch to allow me to override the DCC or to actually control the points without the need to even fire up the DCC. And then the last thing for me is we have the power block. So a lot of people notice these are my main bus wires, and what I have all the way along these bus wires are these little electrical joiners so that I can plug power in. Again, very straightforward, male and female. Oh, there we go. That's the male section, so black to black, and there you go. That's that coming off now. And then this one's a bit awkward. There it is there, red to red. That's that coming off now. So I now have 2 feeds. Right. Again, simple enough. Simple enough. My chocolate block section. Open up the other end. Stick that in there. Tighten that up. To my other bus feed. There. And wire that one up. Right. There we go. Now we have a point here. I should really point it over that. Point it over that. So we have a point here with a seat point motor mounted under the board. We've got the 3 wires coming off the seat motor. These 3 wires via crimping now feed direct into the solenoid section of the ADS-2SX. We have our switch override. We have our frog coming off it, our frog polarity switch coming off it, and we have a DCC feed from the main bus coming in into our chocolate block, and then out, split in 2 is at that point, 1 to feed the polarity of the frog, and then the other to feed the unit itself, charge the capacitors, and allow us to get an effective throw the points. Right, clear the wire needs tidying up a bit. I'll attach this probably to the inside of this cross member somewhere, or maybe this one. The other point that this is going to fire is right down there into the layout. It's a good sort of 10-15 foot away, so I'll follow the same process, but I'll clearly just run large wires and run them right through these holes alongside my bus, and that means that where my operating desk is, which is in and around this area here, I've got the ability to fire these manually should I want to. So the only thing that we have left to do is just to fire up the bus. I've powered it all down the moment I did this work. Fire up the bus, charge the capacitors, and then just see these points switching. Okay, so you can clearly see straight away the unit's got a blue LED on, so there's good power going into it, capacitors are charged. Now in theory, I'm just going to use my manual override, I should just be able to fire that. Boom, there you go. Points switched. And it should also, you probably cannot see that given the angle that you got there, so that's that. The only other thing to do now before we class it as job done is for me to test the polarity of the frog. I'll be back. Okay, so final test on this one now is just to test the frog polarity and make sure that the ADS-2SX is doing exactly what it should do from that perspective. Okay, to do this we're going to use a simple multimeter set to the 200 volts range. Let's see what that gives us. So channel we're in that way. Let's test the extremities first. Perfect, 15 volts, which you would expect to get from DCC. Test it down there, 15 volts. Test the blade, 15 volts. 15 volts, and test the actual test the frog itself, 15 volts. So we have great connectivity for any trains in that direction. Let us flick the frog. Let me pop this one on there. And again, just test this. 15 volts. In fact, I've done this wrong, guys. Sorry. This way it doesn't help. No, so pop that one on there. Test the polarity, 15 volts. Test the blade, 15 volts. Test that section, 15 volts. Test the frog, 15 volts. And what have we got coming out? 15 volts before the isolator. So perfect. We have a fully functional seat point motor powering a PECO Electrofrog point, all of which is being managed by the DCC Concepts ADS-2SX unit. Okay, well, thank you very much for watching. This is my first YouTube video. Hopefully there will be many more. So please subscribe and please stay tuned. Thanks.